exponent. It's not a negative exponent anymore. So here we go. We have some practice problems now. If you're feeling daring, give these a try. There's oftentimes many ways to do them, but I'm going to go through and walk through them step by step. So we have three things being multiplied in parentheses being squared, so we need to square each of them. 5 squared times x squared times y squared. Well, 5 squared can be simplified. That's 25 x squared y squared. Done. Okay, so now we have 1 over z to the 7th times z to the 9th. With fractions, remember, we put something that doesn't have a denominator over 1, and then we multiply numerators and we multiply denominators. Z to the 9th over z to the 7th. And when we have a quotient of two powers that have the same base, we subtract the exponents. Now, a question I like to ask is, where are there more z's here? Well, there are more z's on the top. It's z to the 9th on top, z to the 7th on the bottom. How many more z's are on the top? Well, there's 2. And 9 minus 7 is 2. And since there are 2 more on the top, we write z squared over 1, or just z squared. Now, this one again, let's simplify. We do exponents before we do multiplying. So we have 3 over 4d squared times 2 to the 4th d to the 4th over c cubed. Okay, but 2 to the 4th, that can be simplified. That is 16. And I'm going to combine the numerators all into one big numerator. Okay, now we try to reduce if we can. We have regular numbers. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So I have 4 in the numerator. I see d's in the numerator, I see d's in the denominator. So we're going to subtract those exponents. 4 minus 2 is 2. And there's more d's up on the top, so we're going to write d squared on top. And are there c's in the numerator and denominator? No. So all we have is c cubed on the bottom. Y to the 0 times bunch of stuff in parentheses to the negative 2. Well, first off, I know that anything to the 0 power is 1, so that makes it a little bit simpler. Now, there's a couple ways to look at this. We see this negative exponent right there on the outside of the parentheses. Remember, that means we can turn things over. Everything else stays the same. Now we have all that stuff in the parentheses being squared. So 1 on top. Then we have 8 squared, which is 64. X to the 6th squared. X to the 6th squared. Power to a power. So we multiply there. This is x to the 12th. And then y to the negative 3rd squared. We multiply there again. So negative 6. Are we done? No. There's still a negative exponent here, so we aren't quite done. What has a negative exponent? Right there. Where is that y right now? It's on the bottom. So the negative exponent moves the y to the top, and the exponent is now positive. The 64 didn't have a negative exponent, nor did the x, so those stay in the denominator. And here is our simplified version. And now the last one looks big and scary and ew. We can handle it, guys. Don't sweat. So, I see parentheses with an exponent, so we deal with that first. 3 to the negative 3rd times x to the negative 3rd, y to the 4th, over. So I took this negative 3 here, and I applied it to both things in the parentheses. And then on the bottom, that negative, the negative right here, that's really negative 1 times x squared y to the negative 6. All right, so now I see negative exponents here. Let's deal with those negative exponents. Let's turn all the exponents positive. So the 3 is in the numerator. It has a negative exponent, so it will go to the bottom. We still have that negative 1 there. We have 3 cubed now. That x in the numerator also has a negative exponent, so that x will go down to the bottom and will turn to just positive 3. Y to the fourth, that is not a negative exponent, so that y to the fourth stays up on the top. In the bottom, the negative 1, that's just negative 1. It doesn't go anywhere. That's not a negative exponent. X squared, that's a positive exponent that stays on the bottom. The y, though, has a negative exponent. It's going to get moved, so it's up on the top. All right, so now we can simplify. I have y's and y's, x's and x's, y to the fourth, y to the sixth. Those two things we get to multiply together. Y to the 10th. And then the bottom, well, 3 cubed, that's 27 times negative 1. It's negative 27. And then x to the 3 plus 2 is 5. Some of these can get a little long. You do one thing at a time. Be very conscious to do a good job showing your work.